ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming to the Pros.com virtual conference, and thanks for attending my presentation. I want to talk today about the future of the translation industry and Pros.com. And what I'm going to talk about are the trends that we at Pros.com see developing now in the industry, and how you, as a translator, can take advantage of those trends and continue to survive and thrive in the coming era. I'm also going to use this presentation as an opportunity to introduce Pros.com. So with that, I'll get started. I'm going to talk today, I'm going to give some background about Pros.com. I'm going to introduce the site and community, talk about the accomplishments that have been made over the 10 years. I'm going to review some industry trends and give my outlook for the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm going to talk about the rapid change that's happening in various aspects of the business and how I see the trends coming together and leading to a new era. Finally, I'm going to talk about how to thrive in this new era and give advice on what we see as the changing role of the professional translator. I'm going to provide a 4-step process for success, and I'm going to introduce Pros.com's Certified Pro Network against the backdrop of change. First of all, about Pros.com. Pros.com is a for-profit company that was formed 10 years ago in 1999. The site's mission is to provide tools and opportunities, and that's a key phrase, for language professionals to network, expand their businesses, do better work, and have more fun. Now, I say that tools and opportunities is a key phrase because what Pros.com is a resource that you can use in your business. When you join Pros.com and become a member, nothing happens for you. But when you come there, you will find tools and opportunities that you can use as best fits in with your business. Pros.com services fall into 2 main categories, collaboration and what we can call matching. The matching would include basically any form of connection happening between those who outsource translation work and those who provide translation services. This would include job postings, directory search, profiles, etc. The main collaboration feature offered at Pros.com is the Kudos Terms Help feature. There are also other forms of collaboration. Pros.com is the largest community of translators and translation companies on the web. In fact, it's one of the top 3,500 sites on the web overall. Pros.com, the company, has offices in Syracuse, New York, in the U.S., in La Plata, Argentina, and in Kharkiv, Ukraine. Overall, there's a staff of about 25 pursuing the mission. Revenue comes primarily from membership fees. So what has happened in the 10 years of Pros.com's history? Well, Pros.com and more generally the Internet can be credited with providing a means for translators to come together. If 10 years ago translation was more of a solitary pursuit, today it's a profession that's pursued much more often as a group and with mutual support among freelancers across the world. The roadblock of tough terms is now an intersection, and what I mean by that is it used to be that when you came across a term that was too new or specialized to be in your resources, and you did a web search and didn't find anything conclusive, you were kind of stuck. Nowadays, that's an opportunity to network and collaborate. And out of those opportunities come some interesting things. Groups, teams form, they can quote together, etc. So what has been a negative, had been a negative has become a positive. The freelancer career path has been accelerated. With the tools and opportunities provided in one place, it's become possible to get up to speed in your freelance business more quickly. Nowadays, translation companies have an incentive to be more orderly in their payment systems. The Blue Board and similar services have created an incentive for companies to be sure that you get paid on time. And companies will tell you that has made a difference. Today, reasonable opportunities exist to meet in person. It used to be very difficult to come across groups of translators. Nowadays, there are trainings, powwows, events held in various cities among local members. And today, we're all part of a global network of people who help each other. And that's something that I'm very proud of personally. Okay, so enough about Pros.com. Looking ahead to the industry generally, here's the outlook I would give for the next 3 to 5 years. And the sources of information for this presentation would include, of course, the translator members of Pros.com, the translation companies that use pros.com, and the feedback that has been provided by them, tool vendors who advertise via pros.com and who we have relationships with, the site activity and trends in that activity that we're able to observe, feedback from audiences who have heard this presentation, and also I'm adding my own personal observations and opinions based sometimes on observations of the Internet in general. One thing we can say with some confidence is that significant change is happening in the industry. And I'll discuss today 7 distinct technical and social trends. As I introduce each of those, I'll provide some information from the member reaction collected via surveys, and also give my personal takes in some cases. Then I'll give a prediction about how I imagine these trends coming together to form a new era in the translation industry. Now, as I say this, I want you to note the asterisk next to significant changes happening. The first trend I want to talk about is in demand. Generally speaking, demand has been rising for several decades. Now, we may have had a dip over the last year that may be coming back now, but certainly the long-term trend is up, basically in keeping with the rise in international trade. We see more work in smaller batches, faster turnaround times, and nowadays there are mixed projects with client demand differing from language pair to language pair. So we see a more sophisticated and more demanding type of client. The member take on this. Of course, the increased volumes and steady flow are welcome. On the other hand, having to grab work and the loss of the human element is viewed as undesirable by some. My personal opinion is to look on the bright side. There's always opportunity that comes from demand and from change. Collaboration is up. Collaboration tools are advancing. Translators are organizing into loose collectives, and as a result, they're able to turn out higher capacities with higher quality. There are time zone benefits being exploited, so a team may be formed with someone in Australia, someone in Canada, etc., so that they're able to work continuously and deliver projects in a shorter time frame. And translation companies are now showing a preference for hiring teams. The member take on this is basically everyone has good things to say about this. This is one of the few trends that we can talk about today where there was such agreement, and I think we can conclude that those who collaborate are going to get ahead, and those who try to make it on their own are probably going to be bypassed. Next trend, TMS systems are better and more ubiquitous than they've been in the past. TMS stands for Translation Management System. Many translators are not familiar with this term, even though they may be using TMS systems already. These are the systems where your client may ask you to log on to their system to grab a file, or to log into their system actually to do the translation online. Idiom is one of the providers of these systems. Translators.net has a system of their own, and they've been quoted online, and they've done there's some literature that they've provided online with their philosophies on this. They talk about in the future needing to be able to deliver 100 words in 35 languages in 25 minutes. Obviously, if that's the demand, you're going to need a high level of automation for that to be possible. Now, the folks at Translator.net are on record as having said, automation allows people to use their brain instead of wasting time with administration tasks. Members in surveys have some view this as promising, because what's bad about the hassles being streamlined? To others, it's a little off-putting. Certainly having to work on a large number of different sites is annoying, especially if you're being asked to update your availability in various places. So I think this is one of the things that we can say is happening, and it is going to continue to happen. But probably some coordination is going to be called for among vendors. It just doesn't make any sense for a translator to be asked to keep all of his or her information up to date in several places. And I think that's where we, as the tool providers in the industry, are going to have to coordinate efforts. Next, TM sharing. We see that TM sharing is being introduced on a large scale. Examples of this include VLTM from WordFast, the very large translation memory. There's a data sharing association called TAUS now. And if you haven't heard about TAUS, look it up. It started with 40 organizations active in buying and supplying translation services. This includes such companies as Adobe, Cisco, Dell, some of the large translation companies, Lionbridge, Moravia, SDL. Many of the big players in the industry are involved in this. And basically what they're doing is aggregating the translation memories that they own and in sharing these, what they hope to achieve and what early indications suggest they are achieving is the benefit of the leverage to all who share. Here we see again those who collaborate may be able to gain advantages. Member take on this. This is a topic that was subject to quite a bit of discussion on pros.com's forums. The member reaction varied. Some saw this as something to be afraid of. Here are the clients putting together translation memories created by translators, conceivably in order to avoid having to come to translators. Others see the possible benefits to this. What everyone could agree on is that there should be fairness. And my take is that certainly as freelancers, as freelance translators who are creating translation memories, there ought to be a way that we also can gain access and the benefit of leveraging those TMs. And the indications are that in associations like TAUS, it's in their interest and they're prepared to facilitate that. Next point, machine translation is improving. Now, I've organized these in increasing order of scariness. This one begins to raise people's blood pressure. But machine translation, it's a fact, is improving. Statistical machine translation of the form, popularized by Google, etc., seems to be proving to be more accurate than the traditional rules-based machine translation. We see machine translation being integrated into various tools. It's now made it into Trados' latest suite, if that's a bellwether. What does this mean? And when I have audiences that I can interact with directly, I sometimes ask who has checked out MT lately. And it's usually a minority of the audience. And I think what we as translators ought to be doing, really, translation is our job. We're the ones who should know this business inside and out. And we should know, as professionals in this industry, it's my opinion, that we should know the state of the art in machine translation. It's up to us to know where it's applicable, where it's not applicable. If we're doing work where MT could be used to make the process more efficient, then we have to know that. And when our clients come to us and say, hey, what about this machine translation? What do you think? Can we apply that anywhere? It's in our interest to have an informed position on that, based on our own experimentation. Basically, the clients they turn to us for their translation needs. They don't want to have to do that. We, as professionals, should know. And our answer, we should be able to answer, hey, yes, there are some uses, and I'm already using it in the ways that it makes me more efficient. It's already factored into my service. And when we're in that position, we'll continue to meet the needs of our clients. If, on the other hand, our reactions are fear-driven, or if we go to great lengths to denigrate machine translation, I think it will not be in our interest. I think clients will go and research these tools. So when we ask members, some dismiss them, some are fearful, and an increasing number. At first it was just a hand or two, maybe in an audience of 100. Lately it's a dozen hands or so. Translators are actually exploiting the possibilities. They're taking their jobs, running them through Google or whatever, and when it's useful, they're using them as a step in the process. So you might, if you haven't yet, I would advise you to investigate the state of the art in your language pairs and fields. Next trend, free human translation. Even more scary. Free human translation is being, quotes, popularized. And what I mean by that is we see in the popular media references to this phenomenon of free human translation. We see it in different contexts. For example, Harry Potter, when released, was reportedly translated into, I think, German in one day by a mob of volunteer translators. There are tools, actually, that support this phenomenon, these crowd translations. Commercial sites like Facebook or LinkedIn are now being translated by volunteer users. And we see this community translation model even referenced in mixed orders from large clients. Some of the large clients using large translation companies are specifying that they would like a given language pair, maybe one that they don't yet do. They would like to experiment with community translation in these additional language pairs. And so the large translation companies they're making provisions to deal with that. Member take. A lot of apprehension on this point. A few do see a bright side. Where any attention is good attention. If the industry can be grown, we'll all benefit. I tend to agree with that personally, and I think this is a trend that's happening. Probably the best strategy for the translator is to be the professional in the area. If you take the most reassuring advice I can give to you as a freelance translator is if you consider the job that you're currently working on or the job that you just finished. Think about the work that you did, the text that you were working on. And ask yourself, how much experience, how many years of experience did you need to be able to understand and do justice to that translation? And then ask yourself, how many people would be willing to do that for free? I don't know if it's an 18-page patent or whatever you had. How many people are going to do that for free? It's just not going to happen. The fact is, the type of work that we're being asked to do and that we're being paid to do is unlikely to be translated for free because people just won't have the skills or the interest to do that type of work. In other words, the work where it has to be done right, I expect to continue to go to the professionals. And so even as these free translation sites are becoming popularized, perhaps well-known, they may be the place that the layperson knows about. That person who goes to use that, when they find out that free translation isn't going to meet their need, you want to be the professional in the area. You want to be the person there to say, well, I do this for a living. And you want to be prepared to differentiate yourself as that professional. Final trend, the seventh trend that I want to touch on, is that of direct contact between translators and end clients. This is something that, if reports are to be believed, is expected to become more commonplace in the future. We see end clients requesting it, seeking to establish direct contact with translators. We see tools enabling it. The vendors, for example, will talk about their tools saying, well, our tool enables an end client to work directly with translators. And they take it almost as a given that will happen. Larger translation companies are planning for it. With their clients saying, hey, we want direct contact with translators, they seem to be planning out business models for it. For some reason, it doesn't seem to be on the radar for translators. If this is a trend, if this is the way of the future, it seems that most translators don't yet know it. My only advice on this is consider planning for it. Ask yourself, what if it does move in that direction? How can I take advantage of it? How would I need to work differently or present myself differently if I'm coming in direct contact with end clients? And keep your eyes open on that point. So to put this all together, translation centers. This is a term used by Google, but I want to speak generally on the concept. If we put all these trends together, we can imagine that there will be places where all of this is brought together in a one-stop shop. Whether you want human translation, machine translation, whether you want to leverage these aggregated translation memories, TMS systems, there's no reason, technically speaking, that these could not be brought together in one shop. And if it were, isn't that the place that people would go? Well, Google, about a year ago, there was a leak of some screenshots that had been prepared by Google. Google was calling this the Translation Center. This is not the Google machine translation, but rather a Google area dedicated to human translation. And in the screenshots, what was presented was a vision in which human translation, either paid or volunteer, would be facilitated. This human translation would be backed by either or both translation memories, aggregated, or machine translation. And presumably, completed work would be fed back to train the machine translation and to grow the TM. This has not yet materialized in full form, although Google has released what they've called the Translator Toolkit. But if you do a search online for Google Translation Center, you'll find some screenshots. And what this does, whether Google actually moves in this direction or not, I personally believe is immaterial, because technically speaking, it can be done. And if we look at Google's screenshots, it helps us to visualize what it might look like. Whether Google does it, Amazon, one of the translation companies, one of the translation industry tool makers, it doesn't really matter. I believe that technically this would be the most efficient of solutions, and therefore we can expect it to move in this direction. When the Google Translation Center was discussed at pros.com, member reaction was split. There were many emphatic views expressed, but they went in both directions. Some people were saying, well, this is the end. Time to dust off my old resume and go back into my old industry. And others said, wow, this is the best news I've heard in some time. Pros.com has been great for me. Imagine what Google can do. So the jury is very much out on whether or not this type of movement would be good for freelance translators. But what we can advise is that keep your eyes open and incorporate what is valuable to you in your business on an ongoing basis. If you see something that works, go for it. You know, if these translation centers begin to emerge, as they begin to emerge, I would encourage translators to evaluate them, maybe register, and look at them. And if an investment pays off for you and your business, go for it. In the meantime, I would suggest that you make certain, have certain things clear in your head. You need to know your rates. You need to know what you need in your business, and you shouldn't compromise out of fear. Don't jump to the conclusion that, well, this is something that's going to change the industry. I better go in and offer my services at a discount or something like this. I think no. You have to know your business and be confident in it. So what is if we accept this vision, this idea of a coming era of translation centers, what is the place of the professional translator? And I'm going to present some views on that. Here's some writing from industry analysts, Common Sense Advisory, Renato Beninato and Don DePalma. They say these are guys who don't consult the freelancers so much as translation companies and end clients, so they don't have any particular bias towards freelancers. But what these guys have said is, to their clients, is instead of sourcing linguists based on their constant availability and low price, you all need the best professionals to populate your project communities. Linguists who can translate right the first time. And I want you to take note of these 3 points. They say you need to go find the people who can translate right the first time, 1, 2, on time, and 3, who can contribute to the performance of the community. So people who are good, people who are reliable, and people who play well in teams. Interesting. What do members say? What do pros.com members say? Well, interestingly, although when surveyed on the individual trends one by one, we often saw splits or general pessimism, when we asked the question, generally speaking, are you optimistic about the future? Optimistic members outnumber the pessimists about 5 to 1. Now, this seems strange, and I asked why. And the reaction we got was, well, I see all these different things, and some of them are scary, but things have gotten better for me lately, and they just keep getting better. So I think they'll get even better in the future. And I would say that's probably the best way to think about things. These trends, when you put them together, we can think all different thoughts. There's a great deal of complexity in how things come together. But if you look to your own experience, I think that's probably your most reliable indicator. If things are moving in a good direction for you, then that would be reason to believe that things will continue to move in a good direction as long as you stay on top of the industry. If we look ahead and if all this stuff happens, certainly you'll be able to focus more on translation as an art. If we're doing less repetitive text, if we're dealing less with file formatting because our TMS solution has handled it, if the routine translations are handled by machines, and the challenging stuff comes to us, well, that's great. It's more of an art. Those who are new to the industry, it's my last point on this slide, but those new to the industry, you'll never really know the real mess that was the old industry, when it was faxes and type in the source text before you begin, that sort of thing. As all these efficiency improvements are made, we can expect that more clients will be buying translation. And that means more opportunities to pick and choose and specialize. If you do choose to specialize. If you generalize, it's going to get tougher. But if you have a specialty, more clients are going to be able to find you as the person to go to in that field, freeing you up to pick exactly the work that's right up your alley. As we come closer together, as an industry, as a world, we'll be collaborating even more and having even more fun. As member Monica Algazi has put it, she expects a new equilibrium between useful software and the increasingly visible role of the translator as a creator himself, herself. So the future could be bright. Now here's a 4-part strategy to succeed in the era of translation centers. The first and most important point is to be good. And this is why there was an asterisk earlier. All of this change that's happening, at the end of the day, to the freelance translator doesn't matter all that much. At the end of the day, you have to be good. And if you are good and you can show it, then things are going to be okay. How do you be good? Well, love translation. Love what you do. If you don't love it, maybe you should consider giving it up, because increasingly people will be able to tell the good translators from the bad. Go to school. That's one way to improve your skills. Join associations. Collaborate online at pros.com and other places. Get trained. If you've got a skill that could help other translators, could be useful to other translators, consider training. That's even a line of business. Enter contests, translation contests. And this is something that we've been doing increasingly at pros.com, providing these contests. And I think that the frame of mind that one brings to a contest will be, and it always has been, the frame of mind of a person who's successful. Contests are an opportunity to have fun, to test your skills, to compare and learn from colleagues. It means you have to be prepared to show that you're not perfect and always be learning. And that's the approach, that's the philosophy that I believe has always been the winning philosophy. Next, part 2 of the 4-part strategy, differentiate yourself. Okay, so you're good. You know you're good. But can other people tell? Because to be a professional, part of being a professional is helping your customer to make an informed decision. Too many times I think we in the industry say, well, oh yeah, I'm fully qualified. I've been doing this for 18 years. How do you differentiate the quality of your work? Well, it's top quality work. What does that mean? What if I have a problem with the quality? Oh, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And we don't give concrete differentiators. You need to really differentiate your service. Well, how do you help the client to understand that your service is better? Do you actually have terms and conditions? Do you have something where you say, hey, it's quality. If you have any questions about the quality, I'm willing to subject to a third party. review? Have you considered that? There are people now, a few translators out there, who are beginning to offer terms and conditions. And this is one of the things we see in other industries. I have a friend who is in the roofing business, and he told me his surefire way to win clients. When he receives a call from a prospective client, will say, all right, well, I can get over there next Thursday. How about if you get a couple of quotes from other companies in the meantime? And when he shows up on Thursday, he says to the client, well, did you get a couple of quotes? And the client may have gotten a few, and he'll ask, well, can I see them? Sometimes the client will show them, and when they do, and look at the quotes and say, okay, this one, the lower one, say, what grade of roof is that? And the roofer typically will not have specified any grade of roof. So there's a price, but no indication of the quality. And a prospective customer will say, well, I don't know. And he'll pull out a board with different grades of roof, 4 different thicknesses of roofing, and say, well, okay, this is the cheapest. This is an 80-pound roof. And we call it 80-pound paper. And, it's actually asphalt pressed into paper. And it lasts about 7-8 years. And after that, the sun will start to beat down on it. It'll dry it out. The asphalt starts to blow off. It'll blow down on the cars around the building. And then then it's just paper. You start to open up holes. You'll have some leaks. At that price, it might be that one. It might be the second grade of roof. What we offer is we offer the second best, or, if you want, what I think is right for you is the second best. If you want, we can go with the highest. That's a 22-year roof. And they say, what's the other quote? The higher one. Well, what grade of roof is that? And, of course, the roofer won't have specified. And in this way, he said, I never, ever, if I can get to that meeting and they've got other quotes, I win it every time. Because he was expressing the quality of his service. And right now, from where I'm sitting, it looks like selling translations these days in that way is shooting fish in a barrel, because other translators are just saying, I'm good, I know it. I can't prove it to you, but I know it. So consider differentiating yourself in that way. Now, once you are good, and you've come up with a strategy for differentiating yourself and helping clients to understand that you're good, well, then you have to be confident. And don't let all of this change unsettle you. Translation is a difficult profession. You have to know a lot. You have to be a good writer. You have to be reliable. There just aren't that many people out there who can do what we do. And when you know that, you can be confident. Embrace the automation. Apply it where appropriate. Because if we don't, others will. And they'll reap the benefits instead of us. And don't fear the rise of machine translation and free human translation. We can only benefit as we ride on that wave. On the contrary, recognize the benefits and be in the area. And the fourth bit of advice I would have is to charge accordingly. So you're good. You're able to show clients that your quality is there. You're confident. You come to the negotiations with a confident attitude. Now you can charge accordingly. Know your rate. The Pros.com provides a rates calculator. Make sure you know what you need to make per word or per hour to earn not only your bread but also your holidays. Know what can be had. What are the rates that others are getting? And then once you know your rate, don't accept work below it, ever. Because when you take on work below your rate, well, then you're too busy doing work at below your rate to find new work or accept new work as it comes in. Always look to take on new work at rates higher than your current average. The NGO or nonprofit work, of course, accepted. And remember that your rate is a differentiator, both in impression and in fact. Clients do look at rates. They are turned off by rates that are too low, because they know that there's no way you can dedicate the time necessary. If we look at the data contrary to what is sometimes publicly propagated, it's usually not the lowest quote that would get the work in a Pros.com job posting. It's rarely that, because the lowest quotes, translation companies they know what they're doing. They're scared by rates that are impossibly low. They just don't go near them. We have seen many instances of translators who had been quoting at low rates, boosting their rates, and then beginning to get new clients. So it's a differentiator in impression. It's also a differentiator in fact, because when you accept work at a rate that is too low, then you're unable to dedicate the time necessary to do it right. And it's a vicious circle. You get stuck in work that you can't possibly do thoroughly. You're not going to benefit from the word of mouth, etc., and you get stuck. The way to summarize those 4 points into 2 is be good and be a business person. Remember, you're a freelancer. You're running a business. You need to be a business person. Now, what is Pros.com doing looking ahead to this new era? Well, in line with our mission of providing tools and opportunities, we're looking ahead and saying, okay, in the changing landscape, how can we continue to provide the tools and opportunities for our members, translators, to succeed in the future? Pros.com's Certified Pro Network was announced last October. The impetus for this came from the surveys done in July. And in these surveys, I saw the most significant community shift I've seen at Pros.com, where in response to 2 questions, one, would you like there to be a clearer way to differentiate yourself as a professional translator? And a couple years ago, a minority said yes, most feeling that, hey, look, my clients know how to tell the difference already. I don't really need any additional differentiators. And the second question was, okay, is such a differentiator even possible? And previously, something like 20% of our members said yes, it would be possible to come up with a concrete differentiator between professional translators and those who didn't do this for a living. Most recently, these numbers had shifted dramatically, with 80% saying yes, it would be great to have an additional differentiator, and 90% saying it was possible. So I'm not entirely sure of the reasons for this shift. Maybe it is that people are aware of the trends. They see human translation and things like this developing and understand that it's going to be necessary to differentiate yourself. Maybe it's because of this end client contact. Maybe people realize that whereas a translation company could, knew how to use various parameters, certifications, years of experience, previous job history, sample translations, etc., to tell who was capable of doing a given job, and clients don't necessarily do it that way. They don't necessarily have that experience, and maybe they need something that's easier to work with. I don't know, but there has been a big shift. In response to this member demand, Pros.com launched an initiative that sought to identify professional translators and translation companies and provide them with an opportunity to participate in a network composed entirely of screened professionals. In other words, it's a network within the network, an optional network within the network. Whereas to register at Pros.com, there are no credentials necessary. Anyone is welcome to come in. Anyone is welcome to become a paying member. This new network, the Certified Pro Network, well, you have to pass a certain screening process. And what that results in is a network of people who are all screened. It's the only difference. This is not an elite group. The process does not seek to find the world's best translators, but rather it seeks to screen for a minimum level of ability, adequacy, if you will. The screening process has 3 parts. It checks for translation ability, business reliability, and what we call good citizenship. And if you remember, Renato and Don's advice, Common Sense Advisory, about the type of translator you need to look for, as coincidence would have it, found out later, they identified the same 3 areas as we had in our Certified Pro Network screening process. So you need people who are good, people that are going to get the job done, and people that are going to work together well in teams. So once you've got a network of people who are all screened, what does that change? What does that make possible? And I believe that there are certain transformative possibilities, and I think we're beginning to see these have their effect. You know, if you have a room of people, all of whom you know can do a certain thing or know a certain thing. Let's say you've got everybody in the room is a professional baseball player, to use an American sport, or a professional soccer player, football player. Well, you can throw a ball up and expect it to be caught or kicked. And you can expect this room of people to keep the ball in the air, say. Whereas if you had even a couple people in the room who weren't necessarily able to do that, well, you couldn't be certain that the ball would be caught or the ball would be kept in the air. So you wouldn't maybe do it. In the case of translation, when you talk about things like sharing translation memories, the first question that comes up is, with who? I mean, if I know I'm working with a group of people, all of whom can be trusted to provide adequate translations, it might be worthwhile. But if I don't know whose translations they are, I can't really waste time with that. Also, referrals. We've heard members say, well, my clients sometimes ask for somebody working in a different language pair. I've hesitated to recommend that they go to pros.com because I have no way of knowing they'd get a good person. But with the Certified Pro Network, maybe I will begin to advise that they check out the network of the directory of certified pros. And we've seen that happening. So it seems that in ways that we couldn't necessarily predict or expect, this new network presents interesting possibilities. And by the way, some of the technical and social change that's happening requires this sort of thing. In a world in which anybody can claim to be a translator, certainly we're going to need a more robust means of differentiating those who actually do this all day long for a living. And I think in the Certified Pro Network and similar groupings of professional translators, we have an opportunity as translators to actually steer change for once. In the coming era, as pointed out by the Common Sense Advisory folks, really, at the end of the day, who knows what a good translation is but the professional translators? And so here we are in an opportunity to actually lead change. Well, that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time. In about 10 seconds, I'm going to be live and ready to answer your questions. Thank you very much for listening, and hope to see you all at a virtual or real pros.com event in the future. Thank you.
Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us at this historic event. We've had over 6,000 people log in, making it the largest gathering of translators in our profession. We've got Henry Dotterer, the founder of pros.com, available for question and answer. We've got just about 15 minutes, so we're going to go right into it. The first question, Henry, is from Ralph Lemster. What is pros.com doing to support small, specialized LSPs? What initiatives do we have planned to help niche players develop the business?
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. It looks like we've got a bunch of questions in queue, so I'll try to be quick on them. As far as assisting small translation companies, LSPs, first I'd make clear that pros.com doesn't really assist anyone in their business, but rather makes available to businesses things, tools, and opportunities. So what do we make available to LSPs? Not as much as I'd like to, perhaps, but maybe more than anybody else. To tick them off, of course, you have unfettered access to the largest database of translation professionals. That's direct contact, no commission. There's also a platform that helps you to manage the searching and sorting and these sorts of things around your projects. We've also got the Blue Board, which is a place where a translation company that's responsible and has good payment practices gets credit for that. And, when you've got a good Blue Board record, it makes it easier to start working with new clients. They're reassured. Things move more quickly at the start of projects. A very important new thing we got, it's about a year and a half old. It's really started to pick up traffic in the last couple months, is our company directory. That gets about 500 visitors per day. And that's people looking for translation companies to do work. So that's really what's offered in our corporate membership. You come up in the first set of results when someone's looking for a translation company to work with. And there are other tools like invoicing, things like this. We'd like to do more. I hear a lot in the industry that LSPs, translation companies, are going away. I don't think that's the case at all, and we're looking to support translation companies into the future.
Thank you. There's another question about the Certified Pro Network, and someone's asking about what we're going to do or what we can do to make this more on par with, say, a university degree. And certainly there's a bit of a void in the industry in terms of, having a standard. I think this person educated pros is a good start, but what's the next step? Where do we see this evolving and moving forward?
Okay, let me say that it's basically not the plan to replace any of the things that are out there in the industry. The CPN program is not meant to replace a university education. It's not meant to replace certifications from industry associations. In fact, the opposite. It seeks to make best use of those. So when you apply for CPN membership, as those of you who have know, the first thing you might hear is, do you have any certifications? How can we confirm your translation ability? And we look to the other parties in the industry to do that. We hope that they do that. Of course, such certifications are not offered in all languages. They're not always accessible or easily accessible from all areas. So in those cases, as the associations themselves seem to have recognized, there are gaps. Who will fill them? I don't know. They got to be filled. Hopefully, someone else will do it because it's a lot of work. But if they don't, who knows? Maybe we'll get to a point where we're doing that sort of thing to fill the gaps. But in the meantime, sometimes when a CPN application is not accepted, our screener will say, hey, why don't you look for the next ATA or ITI or whatever certification in your area. So we'd rather look to continue to build on those efforts.
Right. Here's a question about TM sharing. Are you aware of any serious copyright or research infringements that have arose or risen from TM sharing?
Well, when we talk about the possibilities with TM sharing and when we offer tools, we're always talking about cases where one has the right to TM share. And, because we can't, providers of such tools cannot know what the agreements are between the translator and content owner, or whether the translator is the content owner. That can't be known, so we have to rely on the translator to only attempt to share in cases where she or he has the right to do so. Cases out there, it seems to me the information that I've seen, it seems to me to be an area of legal contention. We've got long papers being written about it by lawyers. I don't think it's something that anyone can say with a great deal of clarity what the real situation is. So, the best approach would be to proceed with caution, I think.
Okay, we got a couple of questions. Someone's asking about an apparent sort of skew towards translation over interpreting, perhaps in some of the sessions at this conference and on pros.com in general. The question is, what are we doing, or what do we have in the plan for the future to put more in place for the interpreting side of things?
That's a good question. My short answer is guilty as charged. I was a translator and not an interpreter. Maybe that has something to do with it. But certainly there are many interpreters at pros.com. I'd give a similar answer to what I gave with translation companies. What are we doing? Not as much as I'd like to, but probably more than anyone else. The interpreter search at pros.com gets about 700 visitors a day. There are a lot of translators meeting a lot of clients through pros.com, and what we hear from clients is that it's the best place to find interpreters. So that doesn't mean we'll stop there. We'd like to do more. There's been discussions about facilitating some sort of online interpreting, these sorts of things, and we'll definitely look to support interpreters more in the future.
Great. Here's another question. Someone's asking about, in the kudos phenomenon, there's some language pairs where there's sort of some monopolization by individuals or small groups. What measures have we taken recently to sort of avoid or prevent that moving forward?
In other words, someone dominating a given language pair?
I think that's the gist of the question, yeah.
Well, that does happen in some cases. To some degree, to large degree, the kudos interaction, the kudos community is self-policing. I mean, the pros.com role, the role of staff rather, is to set the rules of the game, and then let people play. And that's pretty much how it works. I mean, you have peer reviews. If somebody's giving wrong answers, well then, that's what peer reviews are for. And if they're giving right answers and getting the points, well, what's the harm there? Is my feeling about that. There's always room. We've made many tweaks to to kudos over the years. There's always room for more, but I think by and large we've got a situation that functions pretty well with some some cycles over time of somebody dominating and then receding and things coming back to normal.
Okay. There's a whole lot of questions about the Certified Pro Network, how to apply, what the qualifications are, how much credentials do or don't count. Can someone be approved to the Certified Pro Network if they don't have specific credentials? If they've got a native language but they want to be certified in the reverse of that. Can you talk a little bit about the network and the application process and where people can go and how we go through the application?
Yeah. First of all, there's a lot of information online about this. You go to pros.com/CPN, which is for Certified Pro Network. and to I'll reiterate some of the things I said in the presentation, but the emphasis is on the word network. This is really about having a network. In a sense, it's a network within the network. Pros.com being a network that anyone can participate in, and the Certified Pro Network being a network that there's a check done at the door, if you will. The purpose of the check is not to find the world's best translators. The purpose of the check is to confirm a certain minimum standard, adequate translator, if you will, in the three categories. So translation ability, and the screening process, really, the screener, it's something like a credit process. The screener wants to work with you to establish that you meet the minimum requirements so that you can move forward. So the screener's not out to catch you. The screener's going to work with you. Bring as much information as you can to the process. I graduated from this school. I've been working this many years. I've got this WWA feedback from clients. And when you put all that together, if there's enough information there, you're in. We're not looking for Shakespeare, but we are looking to confirm that you're a professional translator.
Right. Here's a question. Someone said if you feel in your presentation that there will be more direct client to translator interaction and more direct client possibilities, perhaps why have the translators not felt that themselves? And if we feel this is coming down, when is it going to happen?
Short answer is I don't know. If anyone knows, email me. Go to profile/1. That's me. Let me know. I've heard different theories. I don't know. Because we're pessimists? Maybe because it's not happening? I really don't know. But as I said in my presentation, be prepared for it. I mean, it's something that's always been a pattern. More experienced people begin to reach out to end clients, and then they meet them, and those are often desirable clients in several senses. You get to work directly. You talk about the actual content, and it can be rewarding on several levels, not just the financial. So, even if that isn't the general industry trend, you certainly can make it your own trend.
Right. Here's a question about whether or not pros.com is thinking of doing anything on the financial side, providing services similar to those as PayPal, maybe an escrow service to help translators with the issue of non-payment or late payment.
Well, that's another one where, basically that's a lot of work, and I would prefer that someone else do it and we incorporate their tool. It would be great if PayPal, reached more areas more easily. When they do, we'll certainly pick it up. I think we were one of the first websites to integrate PayPal. We did offer that at one point, but boy, I'll tell you, it's a lot of work. Every country has different regulations, and it just turned out to not be very worth it. It was a popular service, but not something that we were able to sustain. At the point that we have complete transactions going through the site, we'll have a payment loop to close it, but that'll be handled by someone else.
Right. Here's a question about CAT tools. In your opinion, which CAT tool do you think is most likely to take the lead from desktop to sort of more of a in the cloud or web application type service moving forward?
I don't know. I'm not the person to ask on that.
Okay, very good. We've got just time for a few more questions. There's some in this review here. This individual asks, do you think bigger languages will replace smaller languages in the course of further globalization, or will the latter survive in the language landscape moving forward?
I hope not. It's kind of the more diverse, the better from my standpoint. It's just fun, the world the way it is. But But I don't know. If I'm to hypothesize, I guess the big languages are doing well. I think the medium languages are doing well and even helped by the Internet because you can have lots of content in your language and, things like translation tools. They certainly they seem to be helping to reinforce the local languages. The smaller languages where you got a couple thousand speakers, I mean, the authorities in those areas are saying those are going away. So it's kind of sad, but I hope that can be reversed.
Okay. Do you think that MT or SMT engines like that of Google and some of the others will ever be affordable or an option for the individual freelance translator?
Well, I think they are now. As I said, people are using them. What's to stop you when you've got a job from pasting it into one of these engines, and if it helps, you edit what comes out of it. That's already happening. I think that'll just continue to grow.
I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't hit you with at least one hard question. Someone's asked if they've read some negative comments about pros.com lately from some professional associations. Why do you think that associations have criticized pros, and what do we do to address this concern?
I think, there's always valid criticisms. I think someone at the ATA called the site amateurs with a Z, which I thought was pretty clever. Of course, pros was created to serve professionals, but that didn't stop anyone from coming along and using it. And I think the open nature of the site has been a great strength, and it's also been the source of some criticism. You have translators who aren't professionals coming in, and that affects the image of the site. You have optimistic clients asking for jobs for nothing, and those tend to get publicized and forwarded. And it's some smoke around the meat of the site, which is professionals working with professionals. So I think a lot of it has to do with perception, and when you hear the criticisms, often when you confront them, you find out that they're uninformed. They're from people that don't really understand. People talk about bidding when there is no bidding. When you quote or express interest in a job, you don't even have to give a rate. There's, when people say there's a downward bidding model, I say, well, there's as much a downward bidding model as there is an upward one, which is no bidding at all. And if you think it's downward, what could we do? What else could we do to make it less so? Certainly the interest of the site is that translators would be successful and highly paid. So I think the criticisms are unfounded. I think they're based on perception. We haven't always done as good a job as we could in addressing perceptions. And I think, some of it is perhaps driven by fear. But, the trend basically is for these things are deteriorating as pros.com members take positions on boards or as presidents of associations. I see a lot of the misinformation being dispelled. So to some degree, it's taken 10 years, but the situation seems to be correcting itself slowly.
Great. And there's a lot of questions about the recording. This session and all of the sessions we've had today will be available in the conference hall. The entire virtual environment will be online for a year after today, so you can come back and watch or listen to any of the sessions again. It'll take us about an hour to get this up on the site, but again, you can come back and listen to the whole Q&A and the whole session. And we've got just time for one more last quick question, Henry. You mentioned sort of this, bidding and downward pressure. I think a lot of people indicated that there has been or has been some downward or negative pressure on rate. Is there any plans for pros.com as sort of the leader in this space, the largest database of linguists, to go out and sort of educate the buying public about the need for quality and the danger, so the hidden cost of low-rate translations?
Well, I think we're doing that today, and congratulations to you, Drew, for pulling off this great event. At the end of the day, well, first of all, it's not pros.com's philosophy to get in the business of its users or its members. You're going to run the business the way you want to. You're going to set your own rates, and we think that's how you want it anyway. So that means it's up to you to make the decision on rates, and what pros.com can do to facilitate health in the industry is facilitate the sharing of information. So today we had negotiation, we had earning higher rates. We see is, again, we provide the tools and opportunities. You can take those and put those into use in your businesses. In closing, know your rates, be good, charge accordingly. In closing, I just want to say, get away from rates as the final topic. It's been a great pleasure and an honor today. I feel privileged to be in an industry like this where, good people who love words working together across the world, across any geographical boundaries. We're very lucky to have this, and I want to thank everybody for being here, taking part, and supporting it.
Great. Thank you, Henry, and thank you, everybody, for attending, for being a part of, as I said, this historic event, the largest gathering of professionals in our industry's history. We're going to go ahead and end the Q&A. Give us about an hour, and this will be available on the virtual conference website. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Henry. And please visit the exhibit hall. Continue to network. We've got about an hour and a half left with the virtual conference. But thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, Drew.